Hi folks, this is a rare break from the usual format, but I wanted to do a charity episode in honor of Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving is a really difficult time for a lot of us who have eating disorders. I myself suffered from a pretty bad eating disorder following grad school when I had a period of food insecurity during grad school, which you can imagine was pretty difficult. So I wanted to use this time before we start the episode to do a little bit of a plug for the National Eating Disorders Association, which is NEDA, and you can find them at nationaleatingdisorders.org. If you yourself or a loved one have struggles with an eating disorder of any kind, and especially around the holidays, we tend to get this because there's so much of the holidays that centers around eating between Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, everything. And then, of course, there's the high holidays. And then, of course, there's Ramadan, which features fasting, which can be very problematic for a lot of us recovering from eating disorders. So if you're having any troubles with that, there's no need to let the holidays be a regular trigger for you. You can easily contact NEDA for help. They have online chat. At their website, they have a hotline, or you can text them. The number for either of those is 800-931-2237. After all, it's important to remember at this time that unlike the living dead in Resident Evil, not everyone can feast only on the flesh of the living or human brains, and some of us actually need to eat real food, even when we're having incredible mental anguish over it for one reason or another. It's okay. Recovery is possible. You can heal. With that said, on with the episode. Resident Evil Genesis, a novelization by Keith R.A. DeCandido. Chapter 21. Kaplan thought his heart was going to stop when the door opened. How the heck had the Beneath the Earth Road show of Night of the Living Dead managed to enter the right codes? Rain whipped out her Colt, but then Kaplan saw that it was Alice and Matt. Kaplan guessed that Alice finally remembered the security code for the door. "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" she cried as she and Matt entered. "Close that door," Spence yelled, running for the door to force it shut again. "They're right behind us," Alice added, as if that was some kind of surprise. No, to Kaplan the surprise was that they made it here alive. As he tried to shut the door, one of the zombies grabbed Spence's arms. Matt and Alice managed to pry the thing's death grip off him. Spence backed off quickly, rubbing the spot the zombie had snagged. "Damn it." "You okay?" Rain asked Alice. "They're right behind us," Alice muttered. Then she moved toward the other door. "What about that one?" Kaplan ran after her. "They're waiting out there, too." She stopped, turned, and moved toward the glass-walled corridor where 4 people had met their grisly deaths thanks to Kaplan's own incompetence. "That way?" "It's a dead end." Kaplan winced at his choice of phrasing. "There's no way out of the Queen's chamber." "So we wait," Spence said. "Someone doesn't hear from you, they'll send backup or something, right?" Kaplan and Rain exchanged glances. It looked like they didn't remember Procedure 3. "What?" Spence asked. "What's wrong?" "We don't have much time," Kaplan said evasively. Rain was more direct. "You know those blast doors we passed on the way in from the mansion? They seal shut in just under an hour. If we're not out of here by then, we're not getting out." "What are you talking about?" Spence, who had been Mr. Unflappable up until now, suddenly started sounding as panicky as Kaplan felt. "They can't just bury us alive down here." Sitting down on the desk, Rain started to massage her bandaged hand. "Containing the incident is the only fail-safe plan they had against possible contamination." Spence looked at her incredulously. "You're only telling us this now? When we're trapped half a damn mile underground?" We have to find a way out of this room, Alice spoke with finality. Then she grabbed Kaplan's duffel from the desk. What are you doing? Rain asked as Alice shouldered the bag and went into the corridor to the Queen's chamber. Where are you taking those? Kaplan asked, though the answer was obvious. I'm turning her back on. Following her down the corridor, Kaplan said, That's not a good idea. She'll know a way out of here. Alice set down the duffel and pulled out the motherboard. Rain and Spence had followed her and Kaplan in. That homicidal machine killed my team, Rain said angrily. As calm as Rain was furious, Alice said, That homicidal machine may be our only way out of here. Spence's voice dripped with sarcasm. Considering the way she's been treated, I'm sure she's going to be real happy to help us out. Alice ignored him and slid the motherboard into its slot. Without looking at him, she asked Kaplan, That circuit breaker you were talking about, can you bypass it? Yeah, Kaplan said, sounding confused. So do it. As Alice finished off her work, Kaplan went over to one of the other parts of the CPU and entered some codes, then pulled out a remote control. All right, circuit breaker's disabled. This time, if I hit the switch, she won't be able to shut down. He looked around at everyone. She's gonna fry. Rain actually gave him something resembling a friendly nod at that. Considering Kaplan was half expecting her to put a bullet into his brain for getting one and the rest of them killed, he considered this a good sign. Maybe she, like Kaplan, was realizing that this whole situation was way beyond the pale. As soon as Alice slid the motherboard into place, the computer rebooted. The lights came on, and the red-tinged hologram of a 10-year-old girl appeared. Then the hologram fizzled out. Kaplan? Alice asked, glaring at him. Blinking twice, Kaplan said, The initial charge must have damaged her board. Good, Spence muttered.
Ah, there you are.
Kaplan looked around, then noticed the speaker in one corner of the room. The voice was the same as before, but without the visual of the 10-year-old girl. All things considered, Kaplan was just as happy with that. He'd met Angie Ashford once, and seeing her as the template for the Red Queen's AI had always given him the creeps.
Things, I gather, have gone out of control.
Rain lunged for Kaplan. Give me that switch. I'm going to fry her. Alice and Matt both grabbed her arms and pulled her away, for which Kaplan was grateful.
I did warn you, didn't I?
Tell us what in hell is going on down here, Rain said, moving away from Alice and Matt, but not menacing Kaplan anymore either.
Research and development.
Kaplan almost smiled. It may have sounded like a little girl. It may have been the best AI since HAL 9000, but it was still a literal-minded computer. Garbage in, garbage out. Ask a direct question, get a direct answer. What about the T-virus? Matt asked. Now Kaplan shot the cop a look. What was he talking about?
The T-virus was a major medical breakthrough, although it clearly possessed highly profitable military applications.
Suddenly, things were starting to make a sick sort of sense. If there was some kind of virus, maybe that was responsible for the zombie jamboree out there. Kaplan wondered what Matt Addison knew about that, and if he was really a cop. But that could wait. First, he wanted to know what was happening, so he asked another literal-minded question. How does it explain those things out there? Even in death, the human body still remains active. Hair and fingernails continue to grow, new cells are produced, and the brain itself holds a small electrical charge that takes months to dissipate.
The T-virus provides a massive jolt both to cellular growth And to those trace electrical impulses, put quite simply, it reanimates the body.
Rain frowned. It brings the dead back to life?
Not fully. The subjects have the simplest of motor functions, perhaps a little memory, virtually no intelligence. They are driven by the basest of impulses, the most basic of needs.
Such as? Kaplan asked, even though he suspected what the answer was, and didn't entirely think that he wanted it to be confirmed.
The need to feed.
And this was being developed on purpose? Alice sounded aghast, which indicated to Kaplan that she hadn't gotten all her memory back. This was pretty much par for Umbrella's course, though even Kaplan had to admit that this was right on the edge of par.
Originally, its function was to combat insufficient cellular growth, as this is what ultimately leads to aging and death.
Rain was still massaging her wounded hand. This was all for a wrinkle cream?
One application, perhaps, but a far more ambitious goal would be the eradication of cellular-based wasting diseases. As I said, the T-virus was a major medical breakthrough.
And also a mass murderer, Matt said. Or would that be you?
I was trying to keep them isolated, but I'm afraid you've changed all that.
How do you kill them? Rain asked. Kaplan sighed. Rain, as usual, cut to the chase.
Severing the top of the spinal column or massive trauma to the brain are the most effective methods.
Now Rain smiled. It wasn't a particularly pleasant one. You mean shoot them in the head? We are so screwed, Spence muttered. You said that already, Kaplan snapped. Yeah, well, am I wrong? Kaplan couldn't argue with him. Matt looked up at the speaker. Kaplan noticed that he looked pained. Why did you kill everybody down here?
The T-virus escaped into the air conditioning system, and an uncontrolled pattern of infection began. The virus is protean, changing from liquid to airborne to blood transmission, depending on its environment. It is almost impossible to kill. I couldn't allow it to escape from the hive, so I took steps.
Shaking his head, Matt repeated the word, steps.
If I might make a suggestion, you have sufficient ammunition. 1 bullet apiece to the spinal column should suffice.
Rain moved closer to the speaker, as if challenging the computer. What are you saying?
Merely that I think suicide would be preferable to what awaits you.
You're a computer, Kaplan said defensively. I don't care if you're an artificial intelligence, you don't really think. Undaunted, the computer said.
This facility housed 500 technicians and support staff. 500 against 5 are odds of 100 to 1.
Alice snapped. We can do the math.
Logic dictates that you won't leave here alive.
Forget logic. Rain spoke for them all. At least Kaplan hoped she did.
You must understand, those of you who become infected, I can't allow you to leave.
Whoa, Spence said. We're not infected.
Just 1 bite, 1 scratch from these creatures is sufficient. After that, it takes from 15 minutes to several hours depending on the severity of the infection and the strength of the individual's immune system, and then you become one of them.
Kaplan couldn't help but give Rain a look. Rain stared right back. What are you looking at?
A check of my systems indicates my main drive circuit breaker has been disabled. May I ask why?
Insurance, Alice said. We need a way out of here. If you refuse to help at any time, we flip the switch. Understand?
Very well. If you insist on this ridiculous course of action, your most likely avenue of escape is through the utility tunnels. There is a trap door in the northwest corner. Proceed to tunnel 3B, then go right at tunnel 9E. At the end of that tunnel, There will be another trapdoor at the terminus for the train to the mansion.
Kaplan flipped up his wrist top and called up the map of the utility tunnels. Then he looked at the others and tried to keep his voice from breaking when he said, "She's right. That'll work." Alice and Rain were both standing by the northwest corner and looked down to see the trapdoor in question. It also had a code pad. Kaplan did a search on his wrist top for the code for that door. He found nothing. "We need the code."
15968.
Rain crouched down and entered those 5 numbers. A clicking sound indicated the lock releasing, and she opened it, Alice standing next to her. The door opened to a ladder. Rain looked at Alice and gave her another one of those scary smiles of hers. "After you." Forcing himself to focus, Kaplan climbed down the ladder. He and Rain were the only ones left now. Warner would never hustle Kaplan at Hearts again. "Look, we don't even have to play for money. Well, okay, not a lot of money." Drew would never try to fix Kaplan up with his sister. "Really, Kaplan, she's a babe, honest. Don't pay any attention to what JD says." JD would never give Kaplan a hard time. "Man, did girls even talk to you in high school?" Olga would never complain to him again. "What's taking so long?" And won. For all his life, the only person who ever truly took Kaplan's desire to be a field agent seriously was one. The only person who expressed any kind of confidence in his ability. The only one who didn't just dismiss him as another computer geek. Hilariously enough, he never actually encouraged Kaplan. Hell, in his own way, he gave him as much crap as Rain and JD did. But he never dismissed Kaplan either, and always took him seriously. "What the heck is this place?" Spence asked as they entered the tunnels. In stark contrast to the clean metallic corridors and offices above, this place was dark, dank, and dripping. Puddles collected under their feet, all sorts of things that smelled like a cesspool stained the walls, and liquid streamed from the ceiling. Kaplan tried to keep his temper reined in. It wasn't Spence's fault after all, but he was a security division operative, just like the rest of them, except Matt, anyhow. And he knew the answers to all the stupid questions he was asking. Heck, he should have known about the failsafe and the lack of backup. But that damn nerve gas. "Utility tunnels," he explained. "They run beneath the hive for water, gas, power lines." He smiled. "And, waste." "Great." They proceeded down 3B. Every once in a while they came across an adjacent tunnel, blocked off by wire mesh that would allow water through, but not people. Then again, aside from maintenance personnel, people generally didn't come down here. Given the smell, Kaplan could understand why. When they turned at 9E, Spence said, "We've been in here before." "Keep moving," Rain said. "We're going round in circles." Kaplan was seriously getting tired of Spence's nonsense. Actually, thinking it over, he was grateful for it. The more Kaplan focused on how ticked off he was at Spence, the less he focused on his own panic and guilt. "No, this is the route the computer gave us. Through the utility tunnels to..." Spence brushed past Kaplan. "I don't know why we're listening to her." Rain suddenly whirled around and pushed Spence against one of the wire mesh-covered passageways. "Enough already!" She didn't actually point her pistol at Spence, but its muzzle, Kaplan noticed, was close to his heart. "We have to keep moving, 'cause those things are right behind us. You got that?" At that moment, Kaplan didn't care how ticked Rain was at him. Right now, Spence needed to be taken down a peg, and nobody was better at that than Rain Melendez. Kaplan had certainly been on the receiving end enough times in his life. Before Spence could reply, arms reached through the mesh. Jumping back in shock, Kaplan watched as Rain, with Matt's help, pulled the arms off him. That's when he saw that there were dozens of the damn zombies pushing against the mesh. It would keep people out, yeah, but not this many. Alice had the same thought.
That mesh isn't going to hold. Let's move before...
She cut herself off. Kaplan followed her gaze. Oh, hell. The panic came back full bore as he saw dozens more zombies shuffling down Tunnel 9B toward them. Alice was wrong about one thing. The mesh did keep the zombies back. Unfortunately, the frame holding the mesh in place had eroded sufficiently that it could not hold the literally dead weight of dozens of people pushing against it. All thinking as one, Kaplan as well as Rain, Matt, and Spence grabbed the mesh before it could fall and used it as a battering ram to keep the zombies back. But it was a temporary measure at best. The Red Queen's final words before Kaplan shut her down the first time came back to Kaplan.
You're all going to die down here.
Kaplan glanced over to see why Alice wasn't helping them. It turned out she was. She may not have remembered everything, but her famous moves had apparently risen to the fore. Butt-kicking Alice knocked one zombie down with a neck-shattering chop. Then she jumped up to the ceiling, grabbed one of the heating pipes that run parallel to the floor, wrapped her legs around the neck of the next zombie, and then twisted with her thighs, killing it. A nice move, to be sure, but somehow Kaplan didn't think she'd be able to do it 500 more times. Neither did she, for her next words were, "Up on the pipes! Up on the pipes! Quickly, everyone, up on the pipes!" Kaplan looked up. There was no way in hell those pipes were going to support the weight of 5 people. Then the zombies surged against the mesh, and Kaplan realized they weren't exactly overburdened with choices. Besides, these things weren't agile. They probably weren't capable of climbing up after them. Heck, they could barely walk. So far, it was the only real advantage they had. "It's a way out! Move it!" They let go of the mesh. Kaplan unholstered his Beretta and started shooting. Next to him, Rain did likewise with her Colt, while Alice kept up her end with hand-to-hand. Unbidden, the image of a butt-kicking Alice action figure in her likeness popped into Kaplan's head, with zombie neck-snapping action. "Focus, Kaplan." He shot another one in the face. Spence, of course, was the first one to scurry up the pipes. "Get over here," Matt cried to Alice. "There's too many of them."
Go, go, go!
Rain cried as Matt helped Alice up, then climbed up himself. That just left him and Rain to hold off the hordes.
You're all going to die down here.
"Forget it, you Atari." He shot another one. It fell down and then bit him in the leg as Kaplan screamed.